Coming up on episode 395 of Wheel Bearings, we drive the Nissan Frontier and Armada Pro 4X, the Lexus GX, the Nissan Sakura, and the Ram 1500 RHO. GMC is bringing out lower-priced versions of the Sierra EV for 2026. Electrify America is piloting new types of chargers with J3400 cables. Nissan's got lots of new stuff coming, maybe, hopefully. VW says it's going to bring its Cupra brand to America. We'll see if that actually happens. Stellantis profits are likely to get hammered by tariffs, as are the availability of affordable new cars. And the cheapest two-door Ford Bronco with a V6 is now $78,000. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 395 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad from Telemetry.
I'm Nicole Wakelin with CarBuzz.
And I'm Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
Welcome back to both of you.
Yes.
Yay! Nicole, I wanted to narc out Sam because I'm a bad person. He kept referring to Space Mountain as Magic Mountain while you were gone.
Oh my God. Not the same. Sam, come on. Step up your game.
Sorry.
Like, Magic Mountain. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh my God, Nicole's going to be so angry.
How dare you say the name of a Disney thing wrong?
I've never been to either Disneyland or Disney World. Well, it's not entirely accurate. The only time that I've been like kind of on a Disney property was probably 20 years ago now. We did a family vacation in St. Augustine Beach in Florida, and we went over to Disney World to see the Cirque du Soleil show, which is in a theater, like kind of on the perimeter of the Disney property.
What we didn't actually referred to as it was Downtown Disney, I believe, when you were there. And now it is Disney Springs.
Okay,
for the people who know.
Well, okay. I am not one of those people. So my familiarity with some of the various features within the parks is limited.
Okay, I'll let it go.
I'm
sorry if I misidentified.
That's okay. You're a good guy overall, Sam. I'll let this little.
I just don't want to anger the Disney people. They're passionate people. I like Disneyland. I've never been to Disney World. We kind of want to. We kind of want to go to Japan and go to Tokyo Disney.
Oh, that's on our list. We're like some of the summer after. We're going to Japan with the fam, and Disneyland is on our list.
Yeah, we kind of want to do that because we've been to Japan before. So now it's like, well, let's do weird things. We've done all the cultural revolution.
Let's go the completely non-Japanese culture on this trip.
Let's go to the American thing in Japan.
All right. Well, speaking of Japan, Robbie, you were there last week, which is why you weren't here.
I was there. I was there to meet with Nissan, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but mostly, this wasn't mostly. The most exciting part of my entire trip in Japan was to drive the Nissan Sakura. It's a little key car. By the way, I found out you can say that both ways, and they're both correct.
Really? I thought it was always K car.
I guess to the British it's key car. I'm in Japan. I'm asking one person. I'm like, hey, am I been saying this wrong? Because I've been saying key car. And then someone's like, no, it's K car. And then the person next to him's like, no, man, it's key car. These are both people who work for Nissan. So now I've given up.
That's not helpful at all. They're both giving you different things.
I think British say key car. And
little tiny cars.
Little tiny cars, little baby cars. So I drove.
That is definitely drove. I know how to drove. Say
that. That's the Sakura. It's a little key or K car. It's like they call it electric mini vehicle in Japan. It is the number one selling EV in Japan. It beats Tesla, which is okay, cool. So I drove this little thing and I had the best time, even though I got lost a few times. They gave me the car and they're like, okay, here's the route, and it's on Google Maps, which Google Maps in Japan is not great. I use Apple Maps while I'm there. That's a little
Pro tip.
pro tip when you travel to Japan. If you have an Apple device, use Apple Maps. Google Maps, every time I go there, always sends me to a place that doesn't exist.
You're just wandering aimlessly.
Google Maps is like, remember Apple Maps came out and it would just send you places that didn't exist? That's what Google Maps is in Japan now. It's old Apple Maps. And so it was quite confusing trying to figure out like where I should get off the expressway. But because of that, I got to try out this fun little electric car's turning radius, which according to Nissan is teeny, teeny, tiny. It is, I believe, 48 meters?
No,
48.
48 meters is really huge.
I know, it's 4.8 meters.
Oh, okay.
So it's the turning radius.
That's about 18 feet.
Yeah, it's a turning radius of like a truck. And so I had to do a couple of U-turns, and I'm like, ooh, it was really fun. I did fit in it. I was able to sit down and drive, and I was comfortable, and I turned the wipers on for about the first 5 minutes every time I wanted to change lanes, because if you drive a right-hand drive car, the wipers, the blinker switch is on the other side of the steering wheel. And so what you end up doing is turning on the wipers a lot, if you're me.
I did the same thing the first time I drove a Japanese market car.
Yeah, it takes a few minutes. It's just rewiring your brain. It's like when you first drive a right-hand drive car with a manual transmission. You tend to like try to reach for the stick with your right hand, and if you're me, you keep smacking your hand against the door.
I remember doing that. It was like, dang it!
Yeah, pop, ow, pop,
not
ow.
there.
It's not there. So this is not it's not a fast car by any means, but it is a fun little car. It's really more than any other car. It's an EV is available today. It's really for just cruising around town. Driving in Japan is very expensive. Every time you get on an expressway, you get charged money. I couldn't figure out how much money, and because I kept getting off the wrong exit, poor Nissan got charged a lot of money, I'm assuming. Because every time I'd get off, I'm like, oh no, I have to turn and get back on the expressway, and they would get charged money. It has 40. What is this? It's got 47 kilowatts of horsepower, 195 newton meters of torque. I just didn't do the math for that. It has a whopping huge 20 kilowatt hour capacity battery pack. So it's not, you're not flying around anywhere. It's got a top speed of 130 kilometers, which is about, I don't know, 75 miles,
Gosh.
80 miles an hour.
About 80.
Yeah, which is considering how small the car is, that's fine.
And the speed limit in Japan is only, I think, 110 anywhere in the country.
Yeah, you're not really like flying around Japan like a crazy person. And I was driving around Yokohama, so it wasn't like I was out in the middle of nowhere. I was in a city, a giant city. It's got about 111 miles of range in the WLTC mode, which is probably about 190 to 100 miles of range in the EPA mode. Quick charge. I didn't figure out but it's about 40 minutes. Standard charge, 8 hours. You plug it into the wall. It weighs a grand total. Here we go. What's the weight? 1,080 kilograms, which is, everyone,
it's about 2,300 pounds.
It weighs less than everything you've ever owned. Yeah, 2381. Give Sam a shiny.
I'm bilingual in units because I grew up in Canada, so I learned both metric and archaic units. So
yeah, I don't know why we still use imperial. It doesn't make any sense. It's not. Anyway, it's got Pro Pilot Park for parking, which I think we've all talked about. No one cares.
Well, this thing is small enough and light enough that you can basically just pull up next to a gap in the on the curb and just shove it sideways.
Yeah, just shove it in there. So I drove it around. It is it's exactly what I expected. It's nimble because it has the wheelbase of like my arm. It's it's light. It's not powerful in any means, by any means. But it is sort of a hoot to drive because what is it? It's funner to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow. And that's exactly what this is. It's a slow car that you can put a lot of stuff in because it's essentially you're just driving around in a thing that's just about from the A pillar back, just a brick. It's just a brick.
It's an amazing piece of packaging because like I drove one of these a couple years ago when I was in Japan with Nissan for the Tokyo Motor or the Japan Mobility Show, and yeah, I drove it around the Odaiba area of Tokyo, and yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a hoot, and the most amazing thing is I've got Bengt Halverson, a friend of ours, was also on that trip.
And he's like 7 feet tall.
He's really tall.
He is. He's like 6'8", I think. And I got a picture of him that I'll drop in the chat here. That he was he got out of the driver's seat and then hopped into the back seat of this thing, and even with those long legs, he's still got lots of knee room and head room in this thing. And it's amazing how the packaging job that Nissan did on this thing.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And you can, that rear seat, the whole thing will move forward. So if you have, maybe some, not me or Ben or any other giant sitting in the back seat, you have like some shorter people, you can sort of move that seat forward a little bit to get a little bit more room in the back. If you put those seats down, you put a ton of stuff back there because it's essentially just a big box. It's just a box. And when you add, swooping curves and coupe lines and all these other things, you diminish the storage capacity of a vehicle. It looks cooler and you're probably not going to have that much stuff. But with this thing, you could put. Me and Bank should go on a road trip, is all I'm saying. Is like Nissan should give us one, and we drive up to, I don't know, we drive from south to the north, and we solve crimes along the way, and we use our 4 Duolingo lessons that we've completed, so I know how to say rice. How do you say rice again? I don't remember. Yeah, and I don't know. I really liked it. I've wanted a K car, a van, forever because I think it's sort of the perfect vehicle for I don't live in if I lived in the city, it's a perfect vehicle for a city. I live in the suburbs. I still think it's the perfect vehicle. For we take the dogs. We got to go to the hardware store and grab 70 pounds of mulch. It's no, I love these vehicles so much. I do understand homologation. These are, I don't know how this would work in a crash worthiness situation.
Probably not great.
Yeah, probably not great. But so that's the whole point is you're driving pretty slow. There's not a lot of people in Japan who have a full size F250 or even an F150. So you're essentially fighting other cars a little bit about this size, maybe a little bit bigger. So you have less mass when you're smashing into each other, which is nice. That said, I would love a car like this to sort of come to America. I know it's very difficult because people aren't going to buy it, blah, 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 blah. But the K vans and the K trucks, the imports, 25 years, I'm a little upset about this, but people are like picking them up. They're picking them up for farms, picking up for small towns, they're picking up as work vehicles, which is great, but it also means that the prices will go up and because more people will have them. But if more people have them, maybe we can, adopt something that's sort of similar. The closest thing I think we have is the Kia Soul. So there you go, Nissan Sakura. I also drove the big minivan,
the Serena.
Yeah, I drove the Serena. It was cool. It's a big minivan. It's big. It's very fancy. I think Japan knows how to do minivans right. Japan understands that minivans are dope and that they make them into like these. They're either work vehicles or they're luxury like taxis. They're like the Lincoln Navigator of Japan is the minivan, and they're very, very fancy and they're much easier to get in and out of because sliding doors and I don't understand why America can't figure that out. I think that movie. What was the movie with John Travolta? Get Shorty? Was that it?
Get your
Oh yeah, yes,
Yeah, he was
he got a rental car, and it was like a minivan of
like a Pacifica or something,
Yeah.
or Dodge Caravan, and he talked everyone in Hollywood into getting one. So, yeah, um, yeah, get yourself a Sakura or drive one around if you go to Japan. But mostly if you go to Japan, just take the train.
Yeah.
It's so easy to like just get around on public transportation in Japan. It's dumb. Even if you're dumb and you don't speak Japanese like me. There you go. That's my Sakura thing. Go
That's
buy
your
one.
Sakura. That's it. We should all buy one.
That's it. If anyone has questions, I'm on the internet. You can find me.
Or you can send us an email at feedback@wheelbearings.media.
There you go. You're like, oh my God, why is Robbie always going on and on? He doesn't say much of anything. I'm like, it's my way.
All right. Well, Nicole,
Yes.
you've been absent for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, where the hell you been?
And
I just been off gallivanting all sorts of different places. Yeah.
so what have you been driving while you've been gone?
Okay. Where do I start? How about we start with the Lexus GX? That was what I had, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I've lost track of which one I had when. And I didn't write a review on it because Carbas had already had a review. So I did this funky comparison they wanted me to do between the Lexus GX and the Toyota Land Cruiser. Which one do you guys think is a better buy? I just have to ask you. I'm curious. What would you buy?
GX. Strangely enough, I think it's the GX. Yeah.
You would buy the GX.
Robbie?
What would you buy, Robbie? Is Robbie gone?
I haven't driven the GX. Robbie? I like the. Oh no! Oh no! Hello!
Yeah,
you're back. You're back.
I'm back. Sorry, I'm sorry. My computer does a lot of things, including music stuff. So sometimes when I do the podcast, I don't I forget to turn things off, and everything goes haywire. I haven't driven the GX.
Oh.
I know. Because I'm bad at my job. But I have driven the Land Cruiser. I really like the Land Cruiser. I think I wish it was a little bit more Bronco-ish, a little bit more. Yeah. It actually delivered on the way it looks as much as the Bronco does.
It does look really burly, but it's not as burly.
Yeah. But I know everyone's from what I'm hearing from the word on the street is that the GX is a better value.
Yeah, I like the GX. So I gave the GX the nod and said it was a better value overall. I thought it was a better car and I would rather get it. So the GX 3.4 liter twin turbo V6, 10-speed automatic, 4-wheel drive, 349 horsepower, 479 pound feet. It's a great big SUV. It has plenty of room. It also has, depending on the trim you get, which gets a little wonky, it's either 2 rows and only 2 rows, or it can be 3. So it sort of depends which version you get. There's not a lot of room behind the third row. It's 10.3 cubic feet behind the third row if you do get it. But the way that works out, it's the more off-roady versions of it that are 2 rows only, and it ends up with more cargo room overall because you lose that third row seats. So if you really want lots of cargo room, go with the 2 row because then you're going to have more room overall for stuff. But if you want that third row, then go ahead and get the third row. The Land Cruiser doesn't offer an option for a 3 row and has way less room overall. So it's smaller in every way. I kind of think it might look cooler though. I like you were saying, Robbie, it looks like.
Yeah, I like the looks of the Land Cruiser a lot.
Right.
And, again, I think it really comes down to I just haven't driven the GX.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the Land Cruiser a lot. I drove it to LA, which is exactly, on a freeway. That's exactly what it's built for.
Exactly. Right.
when
not built for.
I know when the Toyota people were like, "What do we want to do?" Oh, we want a guy driving down Interstate 5 from San Francisco to LA.
Wait, that wasn't right.
To go do a gig.
But it did its job. I bet have room for yourself. Did you have to put stuff in the back? You're always carrying amps or
it was like an amplifier and a guitar. I mean, I could have put that in the back. I could have put that in the back of my BRZ, to be honest.
Oh, no, you had to have that Land Cruiser. So I've driven the Land Cruiser too, obviously, but I like the GX. I think the big difference is, I mean, the GX is Lexus is a luxury brand. Toyota is not. So the interior, the GX is fancier. It feels fancier. You can get Napa leather and you can get wood trims and you get all this It has a 14-inch infotainment screen that's standard across the lineup. It's a little bit more upscale. And it does, I think the GX does a good job of being one part luxury car, one part rugged family car. I think it blends it well. It's tough to pull that off in an SUV. Sometimes they go too far one direction. Like, I've always been a big fan of Mazdas, but I feel like Mazda's interiors, like in the CX-90, CX-9, I'm suddenly having a brain cramp. CX-9. 90, thank you.
The 9 is the old one.
Okay, suddenly brain cramp to which was the new one. 90, it is gorgeous inside. Like, that is a beautiful 3-row SUV. I would spend all day, every day in that, but I panic at the thought of what my children would have done to that as children. Like the oranges and the spilled drinks and everything. That interior is just not going to be great if you have kids. I like what they did in the Lexus because this has a little ruggedness. It has a little bit of luxury, but it doesn't feel delicate, which I think is something that you really don't want in a family luxury SUV. If it's too delicate, you're going to panic all the time. You're one of those people who has to like do the equivalent of putting the old fashioned plastic covers that you used to put on grandma's couch. So you couldn't sit on the actual couch without the horrible plastic. You're going to have to put covers over everything to protect the interior of your car if it's too fancy. You don't feel like
just
you have
sliding around.
Right? That's what you're going to have to do.
Even when you're wearing your seatbelt, you're just sliding underneath.
Just sliding back and forth. That's right.
Car comes to a stop. You're just like, slip.
Yes, exactly. You don't want a luxury car that's a family car to be so pretty and delicate inside that you're worried about what your kids will do. And especially they have that off-trail, over-trail trim. The over-trail is the one that's designed to literally go off-road and be the one that you adventure, and that's the one that's only 2 rows. I really like that trim of this car. Like, I just think it's a great option for people who want a little more upscale, but they want to go off-road. Now, if you like, again, you need 3, you're stuck. But if 3 rows, you're stuck. But if you're 2 rows, you're fine. And it's nice to drive. It's comfortable. It's quiet. It is big, so you do sometimes feel that size, and it's very sort of squared off, so you kind of feel that when you're on a narrow road, or you're in a parking lot where there's tight parking. You definitely feel its size, but it's not so big. It's not like Escalade big where you can't see where the heck you're going. Escalade. So I think I feel like it's just a really well-balanced vehicle. It gives you a little bit of everything. It gives you a little bit of luxury, but not too fancy. Your kids will destroy it. It gives you capability, but it's not so much capability that you're intimidated by all the buttons and knobs and things inside and wondering if you're doing the right thing at the right time. And it's not outrageously expensive. So the GX starts at $62,900. It is a more pricey vehicle, but the Land Cruiser starts at $56,700. It's not,
and it's very easy to get it up more expensive than a lot of the GX trims,
right? Yes, you can get into a Land Cruiser cheaper, but it's not like you're talking 40 grand versus 65 here. You're talking a small amount. So I feel like I would go GX. I really liked this. I thought it was nice. When we drove this ages ago at the launch, we had a chance to take the over trail into the desert a little bit, and they had us do a little bit of an off-road drive. I think it was originally supposed to be a little bit more robust, but we had some weather, so they were a little bit nervous about some of it, which the automakers will always say to you is not a matter of them being nervous about the capability of their vehicles, which can easily climb Mount Rushmore or whatever you want it to climb, but that they're worried about the skills of the people who drive it. Not everybody has equal skills or equal confidence driving off-road, so they have to make sure that everybody's comfortable. But I thought it was great. I mean, it went up and down little bits, and it handled mud and dirt out in the desert just fine. So I like the GX. I'm a fan of it. And I like what they did, how they've changed the ginormous, hideous spindle grill that Lexus had, that at one time felt like a gaping maw that was just, it was going to like swallow you whole when you walk by the car.
Like a whale shark.
It was like, yes.
Picking up plankton as it just
floats
through the world.
As it drove, and if you got in its way, heaven help you. So I like the look of this. I really like the design of this, and I think it looks fancy, Lexus fancy, without the overwhelming grille, but still has that little bit of rugged that I really like.
A little something. It's like you want a Defender, but you're a little concerned about Land Rover quality.
So why would anybody be concerned about that with a Land Rover?
I
What are you
love that
talking about,
Defender
Robbie?
so much. Again, I've driven like every Defender at this point. They just
All
keep
the-
bringing me Defenders, and I'm like, bring them on.
I love the Defender. It's fun, but I don't have to pay for
I
it when it
still might
breaks.
get I still would get the Defender 90 over the Land Cruiser though.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Oh no, I would do that too. I like the
Oh
Defender.
yeah.
Defender's fun.
when I had the Land Cruiser last fall, I think it was, it was the Heritage Edition, and it was loaded up with stuff, but it was over $72,000, and you can get that Overtrail for about the same price. And even at that $72,000 price point, the interior of the Land Cruiser felt kind of cheap. It was a lot of hard plastics. It didn't feel like a $72,000 vehicle, whereas you get basically the same vehicle, but with a twin turbo V6 instead of a 4-cylinder, and a much nicer interior, and it's still got the same off-road capabilities. You still got center and rear differential locks, and two-wheel drive or two-speed transfer case, and all this other stuff. So it's just as capable. Yes, I agree that I like the front end look of the Land Cruiser a little better than the GX, but the driving experience is going to be basically the same, and the interior is a whole lot nicer for the same money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in either case, if you do get a 2-row variant, you do still get 3rd-row cup holders.
Yes,
They
which
use
is bizarre. Like you look in the back, there's
you
two.
can
but
sit in the back, like you can like tailgate and then have someone to put your drink.
Oh, okay, that's what it's for.
Sit back there. It's just bizarre to me. I'm like, was that one step too far in your extra plastic forms to go? Whoop, this one doesn't have the cup holder.
Yeah, well, those molds are pretty expensive.
If you snowboard or surf, a lot of sometimes, like if you're snowboarding, it's not like 1,000 degrees below zero. You just go. I would go and sit in the back of my Subaru. I would just pop the hatchback and just sit back there and just eat whatever random food I brought and drink whatever random drink I had. So I would totally see sitting. I didn't have a cup holder back there, so I would just put it down and hope for the best.
So you see this as a feature, not a bug? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I definitely see this as a feature and not a bug. I think there should be also some USB-C ports in the back and the trunks of cars, because I will be hanging out in the back of the car and I want to plug in my phone or plug in another thing. And so the 12 volt should be back there, and the USB-C. And if you have the inverter, you can put like the little regular old
request
house
from
outlet.
Robbie about the things you should have in your car, even if it does not have a 3rd row. Make it look like one anyway. Do you need air vents back there too? Just in case.
No, I don't need air vents. I don't need air vents.
Okay.
But if you're like sleeping back there, if you put the seats down, you want to take a little happy poo.
More things that you need to add. You need to have air
thinking
vents.
of the adventure life. That's my jam. I'm sit back there. I'll eat tacos. I'll go to a taco truck. I'll pop the back of the car and sit back there, and I'll put my little Diet Coke and I'll eat my tacos.
You have it all ready to go. You figured this out.
I'm living the just sitting in the back of a car life, apparently.
There's a great taco truck not far and just a few blocks away from us here. They make fantastic tacos.
Yeah.
I
love their chorizo tacos.
Yeah, there's Mike Austin told me of a place in somewhere in Detroit area where tacos. And
now you're just making me hungry, and I need to talk about cars instead, because now I want tacos.
Sorry, tacos.
Okay. So that was the car. I'm going to talk about the other car I had in my driveway next week, but I'm going to talk about the 2 drives that I did, because I've just been on the road. I've been living on the road this month between personal travel and work travel. I had a chance to drive the Nissan Frontier and Armada in their Pro 4X versions, which is the off-road versions, out in the desert in Arizona. They literally had a Pro 4X off-road drive. That's literally all this was supposed to be. It wasn't like, hey, let's drive both these vehicles and test them everywhere. Nope, we're just going to take them off-road, which is kind of cool. I love off-road drives like this. So they really had us out there. Like, sometimes they say off-road and you're not quite sure how far they're going to go. Like if it's a Jeep drive, you brace yourself because you know they mean it. If it's a Bronco drive, again, you know they mean it. Everybody else, you're like, what do you mean? And they meant it. So there were spots where you needed spotters. There were spots where it was very tight, so you had to pay attention. You had some people show you, make sure you're going a little left, little right, as rocks were popping and things as you were driving over them. And it was neat. Like, the Pro 4X is supposed to be an off-road trim. So many automakers have off-road trims that are really 99% looks and 1% capability. And you can't tell because they all have that 99% looks. You're like, but what does it do? Like, we'll take you down that dirt road. That's not enough. You can actually do stuff in these. So we spent time in the Frontier, and then I spent time in the Armada. And I really enjoyed the both of them. I had one gripe, which was in the Frontier, which was the switch on the Frontier was for doing the lockers and things, the locking rear differential. It's on the left-hand side of the steering wheel.
So you're looking for it
Low by your knee. It's like just above your knee. So when you're you're kind of like doing that, like, wait, what? Oh, over there. So you keep so it's not easy to find. So you know it's there, but there's other buttons there. You don't just be smacking stuff, right? So you kind of have to look. I thought it was placed too out of the way. I get it if it was just like this was every trim and it was like some random thing you didn't use very often. But if you're off-roading in this, you don't want to have to be looking for that all the time to either turn it off or on. So I thought it was really awkwardly located to like lean over and look down. But once you did turn that on, it totally did its job. And it made like climbing up these, you're in the desert. So you get that combination of just sort of hard packed soil, but also like that really loose, they're big rocks, but they're loose rocks. They can make it really hard to climb up something. They put us on some steep stuff, man, and it climbed right up that thing like a goat. It was awesome. So I really liked it. And it was surprisingly smooth when we were just driving on the straight bits with a little bit more speed. That can be horribly uncomfortable at times. And it was actually really nice. Then we had the chance to go from the Frontier to the Armada, which is the fancier pants of the two vehicles. Took that on just some really steep terrain too. It's harder to drive only because it's bigger. Like it's just legit bigger. So as you're going,
in the name, it's like
right?
it's like how much is an Armada ships? What's the minimum of to an Armada? 100?
I don't know.
75?
It's a lot.
I think it's in the
what counts?
about 70, 65, 70.
70 ships.
This is like at least 80 ships worth of ship in the Armada vehicle. And I liked it. The thing that's neat about the Armada is the Frontier feels a little bit more rough and ready. It's like a small truck. So it feels like the kind of thing you might take off road. The Armada does not in a lot of ways because it's beautiful inside. You're like, you want to drive this where? In fact, we got in and there was a spot that it was narrow. You could totally fit through it, but there's like these brambly, pokey branches. Like everything in the desert is pokey. It's going to stab you and your car. And
when you drive by it, that noise.
You hear this like, as it scratches along the sides of the car. Desert pinstriping. All of them came out with a little desert pinstriping, which would slay me in this car because it's such a nice, beautiful SUV. Like I'm okay with that somehow. My little compact truck, I'm not okay with that in my big snazzy SUV. So if you're really off-roading all the time, smaller is going to be a little better. Although this gives you a ton of space for people and it's super comfy. And once you take it on the road, it's actually a nicer drive. So if your goal is just to be able to off-road sometimes, like you want to have that as a part of your adventure, but there might be a lot of on-road driving in between to get to those adventures, or it's just most of the time this is hauling the kids to school and practice or you to the office or what have you, I would go with the Armada. But I feel like the Frontier was a little bit more fun and rough and ready to go out on the desert.
Yeah. It's always weird when they're like, here's a luxury thing. Now let's make it off road. Like,
right?
Why? It's like I understand the whole Land Rover thing. Okay, that's the whole deal. The G-Wagon, okay, that's the whole deal. But then it's like, hey, here's a Lincoln. Let's make it go off road. Let's make it into a supercar. I'm like, let's not. How about we don't? How about we just let it be what it is?
But I think it's because
stop trying to be other people.
Well, and I think it's because the off-road, like once upon a time, people who off-roaded were just those people, the few people who went out into the dirt and took their Wranglers out there and put lift kits on them and big knobby tires and flags and, all that kind of stuff and went out there and did that. But it's become over the years something that a lot of people who are not hardcore off-roaders really like to do and like to adventure. And you might not do it every single weekend, so you don't want a Wrangler, but you do want to do it on occasion. And this lets you, I think the cool thing about it is that it lets you enjoy the luxury SUV for most of the time when what you want is a really nice luxury. I mean, it's not a luxury brand, but it's a very upscale, the Armada, and its top trims. It's beautiful, but it lets you enjoy that. But still, what those moments when you want to be that guy who goes out there in the desert and drives the family up a steep thing and makes your kids think you're all going to die and just has some like goofy fun with your family off road. It still lets you do that, and I appreciate that the Pro 4X that Nissan made genuinely does that. It's not just about looks. You have a locking rear diff. You have things that will actually let you climb places that a regular vehicle could not go. My baseline is if they take me on roads that a Camry could drive on, then you're lying about what your vehicle does. It needs to be something that would have killed a Camry, barely. So therefore, truly an off-road vehicle.
It's got, and the Armada Pro 4X has like skid plates and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, it has skid plates, and it's not just looks. It definitely looks the part, but it is not just looks. It can actually, they've got all-terrain tires, and they have that what are they called? The invisible hood, where you can on the infotainment screen. It's like
with the front camera,
right? So
it basically it kind of lags behind a little bit. So that it as you're driving forward, it takes a few frames back and stitches that together with what's around you. So you look at the screen and it looks like there's no hood there.
Yes. So it gives you, if you're on one of those situations where, you're you just can't quite see what the terrain is, or you're really trying to judge, like having your tires a couple inches left or right is going to matter. You can really see where your tires are going to go. And it's a great feature for either people who are doing stuff that's so technical that you need that, or people who are just nervous because you're not confident yet and you want the double check of being able to see exactly where those tires are going. Like features like that are genuinely off-road features that can make it easier for you to drive off-road. So I appreciate that. I like that. So I enjoy both of these. They're very different vehicles for very different people. The family who wants the Armada, the maybe rough and ready person who wants the Frontier. But I felt like they both did exactly what they were supposed to do off-road, and they were both perfectly comfortable and fine cars to drive on-road. So they do the best of both worlds thing very well, and genuine capability. Like Pro 4X isn't just about the pretty.
Which one would you prefer to drive for a Rebelle Rally?
Okay, that's tough. I'm going to go with...
Because you've done the Rebelle.
I have. I did do the Rebelle, and I did it in an Infiniti QX80. So I did it in a great big SUV. And the only things they did, if I remember right, it's been 5 years, they swapped out they put steel bumpers on it, gave me beefier tires, and they that had an air suspension, and they got rid of the air suspension because you didn't want that in the kind of stuff we were driving. It would have been hard on it and probably killed it. But I don't know. I think I might take the Frontier. I think I take the Frontier just because it's a little smaller, and I feel like it makes it a little bit more nimble. And especially a lot of the huge chunk of the Rebelle Rally is in dunes, and I feel like the Frontier being more nimble in the dunes, like it's easy to get a big SUV stuck if you're going in big dunes, just because it's heavy.
Yeah,
it's big.
It just sinks into the sand.
It just sinks into the sand. So it's not a knock against this SUV. It's just a knock against any great big SUV. So I think I think I would do the Frontier. I'd choose Frontier if I were to choose to do the Rebelle again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Do I want to do one more? You need to hold that for next week.
Let's hold that one for next week.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the opposite of what this week's car was for next week. So.
Oh, what do you have?
I had the Ford Transit, E-Transit.
You gonna go off road in that sucker?
No, I didn't go off roading, but it's like I could have put the Sakura in the back of that van. So I'll tell you all about it next week. Just because I was gone, I didn't have a car. I'll probably get a car this coming week, though. I got cars coming in, people.
All right,
I'm doing my job.
Well, I had a different opposite of the Sakura, and it's interesting as we've gone through this conversation over the last 35 minutes. The progression from the tiny little electric Sakura to the Lexus GX to the Nissan Pro 4Xs.
Yes.
And I had the Ram 1500 RHO.
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Bigger and wider and heavier. So the RHO is basically what was formerly known as the TRX, but instead of the Hellcat supercharged V8 in there, it's got a twin turbo 3-liter inline 6-cylinder engine, the high output Hurricane inline 6, which is a fantastic engine, by the way. And I had driven the TRX a couple of years ago, and like I said, for the most part, this is basically the same truck. The only other than the engine, the only things that really changed is they retuned the suspension to account for the engine being somewhere between 150 and 200 pounds lighter. So the suspension had to be retuned, different spring rates, different dampers, and things like that. But otherwise, it's basically architecturally the same. The sheet metal is all the same. The RHO does get the updates that were done to the interior for the 2025 model Ram pickups, which is it's a good thing. Nothing wrong with that. It was already pretty good. Now it's got an even slightly larger screen. It's a 14-inch touchscreen in the center. Still got same very supportive seats. The seats are very comfortable. The Ram cab is very large, so sitting in the back seat, it's like sitting in the back of a limo. You have plenty of room back there. Not an issue there. This is a very wide truck. I have complained before about how wide the Hummer EV is. It's like 85.3 inches wide, I think. The RHO is 88 inches wide.
It's wider than the Hummer.
I can't believe it's wider than the Hummer. The Hummer.
How is that even possible?
Big.
By the way, I'm starting to see those on the road here in Northern California.
What, Hummers?
Yeah, Hummer EVs. Wow. I saw a truck. It's typically the SUVs, but I saw a truck the other day. Wow. I was like, whoa. I'm like, people are buying them. There you go. Saw a couple of them charging.
Yeah. Well, the RHO, this is kind of like a Raptor style truck, so it's more of a high-speed desert runner. Although, it can obviously do rock crawling and things like that as well. It sits on 35-inch tires, great big tires. The one I had the optional beadlock capable wheels on there. So those are like a $1,900 option. The Hurricane engine, still a great engine. I've driven it a few different times now in Wagoneers and the regular Ram 1500s. It's very powerful, 540 horsepower, which obviously is not 700 horsepower that you would get with the Hellcat, but still plenty enough for this truck to get up and go. It doesn't have the rumble of a supercharged Hellcat V8, so it's not as loud, but that's fine. My neighbors appreciate that. They appreciate it not being quite so absurdly loud. But especially when I left for the airport at 6 o'clock in the morning, they appreciate not firing up something like a Hellcat at that time. So as an off-road truck, and on the RHOs, rather than the usual kind of running boards and things like that, it has optional little side steps on there. And when I say little, I mean little. When my wife went to go somewhere, she was trying to climb up into this thing. Fortunately, there's a grab handle on the A-pillar, but these side steps, because this thing's designed for off-road, you don't want really wide, running boards or side steps. So they're actually pretty narrow. So, basically you can get like your toes on it to help step up into the truck. And this is a tall truck as well. So it can be a little challenging to climb up into it. But once you're up in there, it's very, very comfortable to ride in. Very good ride quality. And I did not need any mulch this week. But we did take it to Ikea, which was probably a more challenging task for this truck. Again,
did you get some of them the meatballs?
Didn't get any meatballs, but we stopped at House of Umami on the way home, and had some really good ramen.
Ooh.
So if you're in Canton, Michigan, highly recommend House of Umami. They've some
House of Mamami.
Okay.
good
noted.
sushi, excellent ramen. So anyway,
Sorry.
going to IKEA on a Saturday morning with
Oh
an
my gosh.
RHO. Yes.
Why?
Why not? What could
All
go
right.
wrong?
This is the biggest test of any vehicle ever.
Trying to park an 88-inch wide pickup truck in an IKEA parking lot on a Saturday morning. Challenge, to say the least. So I dropped off my wife at the front door and drove off to try and find somewhere where this thing would fit. But after we were done meandering around these crazy layout of these stores and then walking up and down the racks in the warehouse section, collecting all of the assorted boxes for the patio furniture that we bought, then it was very easy to load everything up into easy enough. I mean, it was able to absorb everything that we bought. But again, kind of tall. Fortunately, the individual boxes were not especially heavy, as is typically the case with IKEA. But loading that stuff up in there, it all fit in there, no problem at all. But I looked later at the payload sticker that's on the door jamb. So all trucks, they have an extra sticker on the door jamb that tells you what the maximum payload is. And my next door neighbors have a 2022 Ford Maverick XL hybrid, just the base, what was at the time a $20,000 Maverick. And that trucklet has a payload of like 1,497 pounds. Guess what the payload of the RHO is?
Oh no, is it like 1,300?
Nicole?
I'm going to go low, 1,200, not 12.
Yeah, it was like 1,208.
1,208. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, so almost 300 pounds less payload than this Maverick that could almost park underneath the RHO.
Jeez.
So this is the downside of buying an off-road style truck, and the same is going to be true for a Pro 4X or a Raptor or any of the other off-road oriented variants of these trucks. As you start to lift them up and you add skid plates and all the other gear that they put on there, that's adding that weight that you're adding. Those 35-inch tires, those things are heavy, very, very heavy. All that stuff, all that weight you're adding takes away from the maximum payload capability of the vehicle itself. And so where a standard Ram 1500 might, depending on the configuration, might have 2,000 pounds or more payload, RHO 1,200 pounds. So it's not a truck you want to get for heavy payloads. Of course, filling up that bed with mulch, not a problem at all, because mulch generally not that heavy. So you can fill it with mulch, fill it with compost, not a problem at all. IKEA patio furniture, not a problem at all. But if you need really big payload capability, something like the RHO, not your best choice. One advantage of the RHO versus the TRX is the base price is a lot cheaper. It went down by like $24,000, I think. The TRX was in the mid 90s. The RHO starts at $69,995. But the one that I had, with the assorted options, including the trifold tonneau cover, and the $1,895 wheels, and the RHO graphics on the side of the bed, which was like $500, and then the RHO Level 1 equipment group, which was $10,000. That gets you the bigger 14-inch display, the trailer brake connectors, Ram Connect connected services, and a heads-up display and a whole bunch of other stuff. including Stellantis's active drive assist, their hands-free active drive assist, which I took out to try it out in the RHO along the stretch of I-94 that runs near where I live. And last week or the last couple of weeks, I had a Lincoln Nautilus and a Ford Explorer where I tried Blue Cruise on the same stretch of road, and Blue Cruise as usual on a couple of different curves along here. As usual, it failed and said, put your hands back on the wheel. The RHO actually was able to go through those curves without me having to put my hands back on the wheel. So that is good. Stellantis does use capacitor sensors in their steering wheel, so it can actually detect if your hands are touching the steering wheel or not, as opposed to guessing like Ford does. But unlike Ford and GM and a lot of others, Stellantis still has some work to do on the control of their system, which for a truck that is, did I mention it's 88 inches wide?
You did.
For an 88-inch wide truck, what you don't want it doing is, as you're driving down the highway in hands-free mode, you don't want it sort of wandering back and forth in the lane from one side of the lane to the other, because you don't have a whole lot of extra room to maneuver, especially if you're passing, say, a semi. And just as when I tried a previous 2025 Ram 1500 last summer, this thing, it does, when you're in hands-free mode, it does tend to wander a little bit within the lane. It doesn't hold it steady in the center of the lane. So I would, for the time being at least, not really recommend using Stellantis's hands-free driving system. It's not as good as most of the other systems that are on the market. The interface is pretty good because you've got a couple of nice bright green bars on either side of the instrument cluster. They're quite visible, and if you have the heads-up display, it also shows you in there. When it wants you to put your hands back on the wheel. It has a haptic seat, to give you alerts, which is also good. But it just doesn't do as good a job of actually controlling the vehicle in the lane as other systems that I've tried. So grand total net price came to $87,200.
You could buy. Oh, hold on. Where's math? Let me do some maths. So 87,000 divided by 15.5. Whoops. Back. Oops. Back 500. You could buy 5.6 of those Sakuras for that. Strap them all together.
Oh, that's funny.
Except you wouldn't be able to actually put one in the bed of this truck because it doesn't have enough payload.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. You want to guess on the destination charge for the RHO?
Man. It's for the RHO. Oh, I'm going to say 19,000.
I was going to say, I'm going to
19,000 or 1,900?
1,900.
I'm going to go 1995 just to go a little higher.
Nicole's got it. It's actually $2,095.
Oh,
Wow,
that's a lot.
It's a heavy truck.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of truck.
We gotta, yeah.
It's a lot of.
But if you need to haul some IKEA furniture, it's got you covered.
I mean, it's
You
a
need
fun
to haul
truck.
IKEA furniture very quickly through the desert. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of truck. It's a very, very, very fun truck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's fun.
Depending on what you're using it for. I mean, if you want as a daily driver, not necessarily so great.
I don't think do you think anybody uses? I mean, I guess you do. I guess if you're a hardcore off-roader, yeah, you would use this as a daily driver, wouldn't you?
Maybe.
Well, I mean,
there are people who use Cybertrucks as daily drivers. So
yeah, this is their big. Like, how many trucks can you afford if you're buying this?
Yeah.
Right. If you're buying this, you can't afford anything else. This is all you got.
Yeah.
You got to suck it up and do that for the commute into downtown.
Even loaded up, at $87,000, that's still many thousands cheaper than the loaded TRX was. So there's that.
Yeah. I had a friend at a giant GM SUV who used to drive from Orange County to Hollywood every day for work. and it's not even Hollywood, Burbank, which is further, every day for work. And I was
Yeah.
like, how much are you spending on gas? And it was some insane amount. I'm like, why don't you get like a Prius or something? He's like, yeah, but I just really love my big truck. And I was just like, all right.
I saw the weirdest Prius in the parking lot. Okay, you know how you could? It was at breakfast this morning, and you said Prius, and it freaked me out. So it was silver, like many a Prius is, but it had this color that like you couldn't see at all. It looked silver, and then when you approach it just right, suddenly it's pink. And as you move around it, the pink disappears. I don't know what it was about this weird. It was like where you'd almost put like stripes on the side of a car, but it was on sections of body panel and it was. It was the strangest thing. Like it was clearly something somebody spent some money and time on. And I was like, you did that to your Prius? It was just it was the weirdest looking Prius I've ever seen in my life.
Well, I forgot to mention fuel economy of the Ram RHL. Fuel consumption.
I'm sure it's great. Like 30, 40 miles per gallon.
It just barely gets into double digits.
Oh, geez. But it gets there. Technically, it gets there.
11 miles per gallon.
11 miles per gallon.
I mean, it could have dropped a whole mile.
And I was not drag racing this thing.
11 miles per gallon. That's
11.
I mean, you're making a lot of concessions so you can say that you're going off-roading, which you probably don't do that much.
Yeah. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
Again, there are people who do a lot of off-roading all the time. They live up dirt roads. I almost lived with my family. We lived up in the middle of nowhere in the mountains for a little while. We didn't have electricity. We had like a generator. We had a well. Like the only way to get up and down the hill was in an all-wheel drive monster truck, essentially. We didn't have a phone. We had to walk. There was a phone booth in the middle of the forest a mile from our house. It was the weirdest thing. I'm not
Really?
So if you need to use the phone, you had to like huff it down to the phone booth just next to a dirt road it was so weird. It was just like, we're going to put a phone up there, but just one. And we'll put it in the booth because it snows and rains and whatnot up here. So for that, we probably wouldn't have gotten this anyway. We probably just gotten a Subaru.
Let's stick with the big truck theme for a minute.
Big trucks.
This week, GMC, last fall they finally launched the Sierra EV, and they launched it only as the Denali Edition 1, it was a little bit expensive. It was actually cheaper than when they first announced it, because when they first announced it, it was like $107,000, and then by the time it actually went on sale, they had dropped the price by about $10,000 to about $97,000. But this week they announced the 2026 model year Sierra EVs, and they're adding 2 new trim levels and more battery options. And so for model year 26, which we don't know when they're actually going to arrive, but sometime in the next few months, you will be able to get the Sierra EV in elevation trim and also in an AT4 off-road. So not quite as aggressive as an RHO, although actually probably heavier because it's GM electric truck, so it's absurdly heavy.
Mhm.
But and then there's 3 battery sizes. There's already 2 that are available now. You can get the Denali with the max range battery. It'll get you 460 miles of range. You can also get it with the standard range battery, which is 170 kilowatt hours. So the max range is 204 kilowatt hours. The 170 kilowatt hour battery will do 390 miles. And then there is a standard range battery, which is going to be about 119 kilowatt hours. And they're not saying what the range on that one's going to be, but probably for the elevation for the base model, it'll probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 280, 290 miles of range. And that elevation standard range, when it arrives, is going to have a starting price of $64,495, which is
more affordable.
like 30 grand cheaper than the current Denali Edition 1. So it's definitely more attainable. And then the extended range elevation, which will get you somewhere around 390, 400 miles. That one is going to be 72,695. The AT4 is going to be on 35-inch tires like the RHO. And that one is going to be 81,395 with the extended range battery, 91,695 with the max range. And then the Denali with the Denali max range is going up by about $3,000 to 100,695. But they're also offering the Denali standard range and extended range, and those will have all the luxury features almost all the luxury features in the cabin, but it will not have things like the midgate. Will go from being standard equipment to optional, and there's a bunch of other things that become optional as well. So, you ready to sign up for a Sierra EV?
It's a lot of money.
Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah.
I'm not driving one until like middle of April, so I don't know. I'm doing a whole thing with it.
Yeah. It's at least it's going to be a little more attainable. It's still very expensive, and if it's fine. If you're doing anything except long distance towing is still a problem until they get an E-Rev version of this.
That's
thing.
the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Electrify America, our favorite place to charge EVs.
It's my favorite place.
They
it's free
are
for me.
Yeah, it is. That's right. He's like, yes.
They're apparently experimenting with some new chargers, which may hopefully be a little more reliable. Tom Malogny at State of Charge YouTube channel did a video the other day. Apparently, there's a station, an EA station in Florida near Orlando, and then
What just happened?
I don't know. I like because you're saying there's one, but they have 2 pilot stations.
Yeah,
one in Orlando and one in Waterford, Connecticut, and then like putting 2 up, and then
it put
there it goes, and balloons came
on
up.
his screen. We're like, why are there balloons?
the one in Waterford has new chargers from Alpitronic, which are 400 kilowatt chargers, and they also have both CCS and J3400 charge connectors on them. So you can charge
2 cables or
it's 2 cables.
Okay.
So you can pick whichever one you need for your particular vehicle. So starting to see some rollout of J3400 on non-Tesla chargers.
There's also the ChargePoint OmniPort, which
Right.
has on one cable has an adapter, so when you pick it, it'll throw NACS on your charger. What's fun is about the Electrify America pilot.com/pilot hyphen stations. That's that a hyphen, yeah. Is that the picture is of a it is not a J3400 connector. It is just CCS.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Hey,
oh,
it's
introducing a
Electrify America. What do you expect?
I know we've been giving Electrify America a lot of guff, but I have had, like, I would say 90% of the time I've been charging going up and down the state, no issues with Electrify America. They've been working pretty great. There was the Christmas time where 2 of the 10 charging stations were out of order and we had to wait. But I plugged them in. I plugged the car in. It charges really quickly. I eat my burrito or taco, and then I get back on the road. So they've been doing so. So kudos to Electrify America for taking care of business. I still think the app is. I think all the apps aren't really that great. I still don't understand why EVgo doesn't have like a car related app. Like, so now I have to open up the app while I'm driving. You're trying to kill me. Like, why don't you have this in CarPlay? And it does not. It's very weird. EVgo get it together, and Tesla also doesn't have an app. If they want more people, fortunately, like my car will find all the charging stations, all the networks, and tell me which ones have people at them or not.
Yeah,
and that's good.
And EVgo has been providing APIs for automakers and nav providers to get the charging station locations. So like Google Maps has EVgo chargers in there. I think Apple Maps does. So if you're using a GM vehicle with Android Automotive, it'll find the EVgo chargers. I think.
They changed the branding. There were EVgo stations. You know how they were branded Ultium stations?
Yeah.
You know how they killed the Ultium name? So I was at an EVgo station shooting video for something, and they've changed the one near my house, the 350s, and they've gotten rid of the Ultium branding. It's gone.
Okay. Yeah, GM's been getting rid of that anyway.
Why not? Why? It was so much money, and then they had to go and take all the stickers off and slap new stickers on all these stations.
Jeez.
GM and branding.
I know.
Yeah.
It was very weird. Anyway, man, I really, because there's another chart. There's an Electrify America charging station, north and south of my house. There's a lot and the new one that they're building is like less than a mile from the other one. And I was really hoping it was NACS. I was driving by so slow, looking at the charging cables, like trying not to be like just a weird creeper. Like people working there are probably like, well, who is this guy who keeps driving by? And then I was very disappointed that it was just the regular CCS because I wanted to do a big old video about it. I still have no idea.
Any news stations that they build would include NACS cables on there.
Yeah, I was very confused why it didn't have it, and then the fact that some of them are 400 volt is very confusing to me. But okay,
not your decision.
Saving some money,
I guess.
So, Robbie, besides the Sakura, what else did you see in Japan?
I saw so many things that I'm not allowed to talk about, but the things I can talk about, I will talk about. So I was in Japan to speak with Nissan, talk to the new, the yet to be CEO, but new CEO, Ivan Espinosa.
Yes.
And the current old CEO. So as Nissan dragged a bunch of journalists from around the world to Japan to go and say, hey, it's not as bad as you think, or there's some stuff we got to fix. Also, here's all the cool stuff that's coming, and they had a lot of actually very cool stuff that's coming. They have the new Nissan Leaf, which looks really dope. I'm a big fan of the new Leaf. It's gone from like sort of a hatchback to a sporty little crossover SUV, which I mean that's what the market wants, to be honest. So don't. If you're like, oh, but I love the hatchback. Well, I didn't like that Nissan hatch. I didn't like the way the Leaf looked. I found the Leaf to be pretty much the most boring EV on the market when last time I drove it.
Really?
It just felt like
there's so many. When it came out, it was one thing, and now there's so much out there that's
Yeah, Nissan should have been. I mean, they beat Tesla to market. They were the number one. The Leaf was the number one selling EV for like 10 years, and then they just sort of languished under mismanagement. Someone, the person running it was more interested in getting themselves some sweet apartments, and then escaping Japan in like a box. and then the current CEO is leaving. I think this poor guy was just handed a big pile of poo and told, hey, can you make something out of this? And I think that Nissan has done a lot to sort of like turn itself around, but I don't probably quite not enough, which is where Yvonne comes in. But yeah, the new Leaf looks dope in person.
Yeah, Ivan Espinosa, he prior to being named as the new CEO, he was head of global product planning for Nissan for the last several years. Yeah, I met him in 2023 when we were there for the Japan Mobility Show, and there was, we saw a bunch of stuff, probably a lot of the same stuff that you saw this past week, but we weren't allowed to talk about it yet.
Yeah, so there's some cool stuff coming that we can't say. I can't talk about.
They're all secrets.
It's all secrets. But the Leaf we can talk about. The Micra's coming back if you live in Europe. If the
Micra looks really cool.
The Micra looks so dope. And we talked to Alfonso, the head of design, and he was just like, he was talking about how it's charming. And he's like, yeah, the U.S. market doesn't really like charming like vehicles like this. Like there's no. It's not there. If you think about it, there's really no like fun, like sort of sweet vehicle like the Micra in the U.S. market. Also, it's small. U.S. drivers, we don't like anything small. We want trucks as big as our first apartments. And so, yeah, no, I'm pretty stoked about the Micra. There's a new Sentra coming. Saw that. That looks nice. More importantly, and the Leaf is great. The Micra is great. Nissan doesn't. The Rogue, there's no hybrid Rogue.
Mm-mm.
And the Rogue like fights against the RAV4 and the CRV. Like that's its competitors. The CRV, like more than 50% of the sales are hybrid sales. And so when you look at what Nissan's offering, you're like, well, what's going on? And Nissan understands that this is a huge gap and a blind spot in what they had. They sort of they gave me a very quick reasoning was that during COVID lockdowns, the prices of vehicles went skyrocketed, which meant that EVs would look more affordable compared to everything in relation to everything else. And so if you wanted to build a hybrid, that means you had to pull an EV off the market, and everyone was going like all in on EVs at the time. And so instead of doing a hybrid, they just kept like looking at EVs, and then of course everything went back to not normal but less. And so it's sort of they got caught flat-footed is what happened. Instead of like they should have moved quicker to hybrids in the U.S. market, or this are changed quickly. Which of course Nissan's been having problems because they don't have the capital that everyone else has. That said, their hybrid system, their e-power system, is a series hybrid. So the gas generator that's in the vehicle doesn't power the wheels. It's always the electric motor. And so Nissan said it feels more like driving an EV, which is true. And you don't have that like real, I know the Toyota motor, and it just sounds, it's grating. And so they've sort of kind of fixed that. They had I'm going to say it, the Qashqai, sorry. So in
is it Qashqai?
Qashqai. So the Qashqai in Europe has the second generation of e-power. They have a third generation that's coming out that's smoother. We got an opportunity to drive both of those.
You drove the third gen as well?
Yes, we drove the third gen. And so we drove the second gen, which is like, all right, I can understand. And then you drove the third gen, you're like, oh yeah, this is much better. It's smoother, it's nicer. It's the one that's coming to the United States. So that is, if you, I really like the way it drives. I think it drives better than what the Toyota and the Honda. And again, it's because you're essentially driving, at the wheels, it's an EV, is what you're getting. So Yeah, so for folks who are like, oh, the EREV, it's like a very a low level EREV, I guess.
Yeah, because there's no plug, so
Yeah, there's no
it's a
plug. It's
small
got a
battery like a hybrid.
Yeah, it's got a 1.8 kilowatt hour battery pack in it, so it's not even a huge battery. But yeah, driving around, like, oh, this is really nice. It's and I think the Rogue is gotten better as an EV overall. The Qashqai is essentially just a Rogue with a lot of Qs in it.
Well, it's Qashqai is smaller. So the previous generation Qashqai was the vehicle that they previously sold here as the Rogue Sport. So it's smaller than the Rogue. It's in between the Rogue and the Kicks in terms of size.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I wish we had the Qashqai, but Americans big cars. The Rogue will go in production in 2026, so that'll be fun. I really, talking to the executives, and we did roundtables, and there was presentations, and there was a humility there that I don't think, I think we've heard the stories from, I think it was a Reuters article, that the reason the Honda Nissan merger fell apart was because Nissan was trying to say that it is it is an equal partner to Honda, which I think everyone who has any idea of how seen the industry or seen the market knows that that's not true.
Not actually what's going to happen.
That Honda is a behemoth. Nissan is not. Honda is doing well. Nissan isn't doing so great. Ivan was he's like, he said, I think he was a little bit frustrated because he's like, the talks fell apart, and then everyone thought that they just stopped talking to Honda, which isn't true. They're still doing partnerships with Honda. They're up for doing partnerships literally with anyone at this point, it seems like. I think they even talked about being humble, which is something that you don't hear automakers do. Automakers they're typically very, braggadocious and look at us, and everything's great even when things aren't great. Nissan seems to understand that it understands where it is right now, and it understands what it needs to do. It's just doing it is sort of the next phase. And looking at some of the sort of designs that they showed off, I think there's an opportunity to Nissan to be that Japanese automaker that still does, the big, mass production vehicles that people like, but also the weird little quirky things that people sort of fall in love with. They do have, it looked like an Xterra EV. That's not what they're calling it. It's going to be built in Canton, Mississippi, not Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Mississippi. I think
it's very cool looking. I saw it at the design studio in 2023.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. I think they're trying to differentiate themselves from what other EVs are on the road. I'm thinking about the timing. I have it written down somewhere, but I believe it beats. If it's 2026, it beats Scout to market as a sort of an off-road EV. They are saying it's sort of like almost a light off-roader. It's not like hardcore. It's not a Wrangler. It's not a Defender, but it's still like something.
Or more of a competitor to the Honda Passport.
Yeah, there you go. So it's more of the, you can still do some off-roading. The off-roading, 99% of people do that off-roading. So that'll be fun.
More than what you can do with a Camry, but less than a Wrangler. Less than a Wrangler.
Exactly. More than a Camry, less than a Wrangler. That happy medium that most people actually need. So yeah, that seems cool. You go in and I think I've said this before. I don't want Nissan to go away. I don't want them to fail. But you have to look at what is happening in the world. I think the recent tariff, they did this whole presentation, and then the next day there's the 25% tariff on everything built outside the United States. Blah blah blah. I don't think that's going to help them very much. But those tariffs, how they're essentially turn them on, turn them off, turn them on, turn them off, turn them on, turn them off. And it's chaos. I think you just put your head down and just hope for the best if you're an automaker at this point. But overall, I think they have the right attitude, and I think they have the right products to sort of to keep going. I don't think and they, they're very much like Infiniti isn't going anywhere. So they also have an an electric SUV coming. It seems very swoopy and futuristic, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. I like the way the sort of design of the Infiniti SUV. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. No, I feel better about Nissan post this trip.
You do.
And then that was the whole reason of the trip. But I am, whenever someone's like, let me tell you about how we're awesome we are, my first reaction is, oh God. But it was more like, hey, yeah, we know things weren't great.
But here's what we have in the pipeline.
Here's what we're trying to do.
This is how much money we have. This is what we're trying to do. This is how we're going to try to do it. We're doing our best, man. We're just doing our best. And you're like, all right. If I think that attitude is really going to help them in the near future, is just like understanding who they are, what they need to do, being open to partnerships, and bringing technology and the vehicles to the U.S. market that are on par with what everyone else has, because I think there's been a lag at Nissan for a few years as they just try to catch up in the past few years, and now it's time for them to actually do so.
So when I was there in 17 months ago now, they showed us the Gen 3 e-Power system, and e-Power is a really interesting concept. They showed us the Gen 3 version. We didn't get a chance to drive it yet. It wasn't ready for that yet. But big part of that was a lot more integration, taking cost out of the system, making it more affordable.
Yeah,
they can put
they
it
have
in more
a 5
vehicles.
in 1.
Yeah.
The 5 in 1 system where they shove everything together.
Yeah.
They're sharing the electric motor that's being shared. It's essentially the same electric motor. It's in the EVs.
Mhm.
So that's sharing components from vehicles that are there. The gas generator is based on on a vehicle they already have. It's just been retuned. So they're not trying to let's just make a whole motor just for this. They're just like, let's take one of the motors we already have and make it work in a way that's more efficient for this vehicle.
Did they talk much about if they're going to be able to get much in the way of efficiency improvement with this Gen 3 e-Power? Because right now the Rogue is sold in other markets as the X-Trail, and you can get the Rogue today in UK and Australia and several and Japan and other places with this Gen 2 e-Power system on there. And when I was there, we did get a chance to drive the X-Trail with e-Power and also the Serena with e-Power. And, it drove fine. But when I actually started looking up, the fuel economy numbers for the X-Trail e-Power, like in the UK, and you start doing the conversions, from, miles per imperial gallon to miles to US gallon, and accounting for WLTP versus EPA, it actually only came out to about 2, maybe 3 miles per gallon better fuel efficiency than the current 1.5 liter 3-cylinder turbo that they have in the Rogue. So it wasn't actually that much more efficient than the gas engine they already have. So, did they talk much about that? Is the new one going to be significantly more fuel efficient?
I can't remember if I'm allowed to say yes or no. That's the thing with embargoes, is
Okay.
they gave us
answer.
it was 2 packed days
Okay.
of this stuff, and a lot of stuff's on the was available to write. A lot of stuff we can't write until later. And so it became so confusing. They had to send an entire email just to say, okay, this is what you can write, this is what you can't write right now. I know that I saw something, but I am not 100% sure I can actually say yes or no to that question.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, everybody.
No worries.
It's
Hybrids.
All right. Let's see. How about Cupra? Have either of you ever seen or driven a Cupra yet?
I have
Yes.
not.
Do you even know what Cupra is?
I do, but I've never. I know what it is because it's just like, this is a job we do. But do I really I know what it is like a casual person, because it's not here. We don't have it, or at least Not yet.
Were
I
there
drove
any
one.
in?
I drove one in Pasadena.
That's what I was going to ask, if there was any for World Car judging.
Not this past November, but the November before.
Yeah, I don't think I got a chance to drive it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was like a fun little like. It's like a
How's
little
that go?
fun.
Okay, just checking.
So
that's yeah.
So for the listeners not familiar with Cupra, back in, I want to say, the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a Spanish automaker called Seat, which was in financial trouble. And so Volkswagen Group bought Seat. And so Seat went from designing and building their own vehicles to building vehicles, new models that were based on VW platforms with VW engines, different styling. And that was fine. Seat's still around. And then they had a model called the Seat Cupra, which was like a golf-sized hatchback, hot hatchback. And then at some point, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, they decided to spin off Cupra for reasons. They spun off Cupra as a separate brand from Seat.
Reasons.
And so Cupra is now supposed to be this more performance-oriented brand within the VW group, with different style from VWs and Skodas and even Seats, different design. And I think at the LA Auto Show in November, VW of America announced, we're going to bring the Cupra brand to North America. Why exactly? Not sure.
I think Volkswagen has sort of sucked all the fun out of the R.
Yeah.
And so you got to go somewhere, and so that's where the Cupra is like if the R was a whole brand. That's what Cupra is.
Okay.
The Golf R was
more
an entire
style.
brand. Yeah, with wackier, fun style. Yeah.
And so anyway, Edmunds has a story about it, but and actually Nicole is going to soon get an opportunity to drive a couple of Cupra models that are intended to come to the U.S.
Yes.
But given the tariff situation and the fact that these models are all built in Spain.
Well, I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, I'm the chancing. It's going to be in the middle of April, right before the New York Auto Show, actually, where I'm going to have a chance to go to Miami and drive these vehicles. I'm kind of excited. Like, it's always neat to drive something you have absolutely zero experience with. Like, it's not like I've driven a bunch and what do they have now? It's like, I've never driven one of these. So they're going to give us a chance to hear about their plans for coming to the U.S. and talk to some executives. Yes, and drive a little bit. So we'll see. It's at the Miami E-Prix is what we're going to be going to attend.
Formula E race.
Formula E. So we're going to do this, and I'm really curious about this one. It's not just the cars, but professional curiosity for like, you really are okay? You're coming here? How is that going to work given the climate right now? I don't know, but it'll be an interesting thing to experience either way, and I will report back.
Yeah, and they're planning to launch 2 models: the Terramar, which looks like probably a Tiguan sized crossover, and then the Formentor, which is a little bit smaller.
Yes, and the Formentor will be. It says Terramar, Formentor, and Formentor PHEV. So they'll have a plug-in hybrid too.
Yep.
And their head of R&D is going to be, and marketing will both, and chief brand officer. So there's going to be a bunch of executive types at this event to chat with him about the plans for coming over here. The names are fabulous. Formentor, I kind of like that.
And Cupra, they are competing in Formula E. They've got a Formula E team. So and most of their, pretty much everything they sell is electrified. It's either battery electric or plug-in hybrid. And they've got a couple of mild hybrids as well, but most of what they're selling is plug-in hybrid or battery electric, and built off of VW platforms. But and like I said, they look good. I like the way they look. But it'll be interesting to see if they ever actually arrive.
I know, because it says they're saying 2030 and it's 2025.
Well, before 2030.
By 2030, yeah. So that's only 5 years. And things with the tariffs and all this has been changing so quickly. I don't know how you bring a new brand to the U.S. right now that is not from the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you do that right now. I don't know how you do it.
Conceivably, they could build these in Chattanooga.
They could. That's a possibility.
Because they share platforms with VW vehicles, and especially if they're going to sell electric ones, electric Cupras, they're on the same MEB platform as the ID4.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could.
How far is that production capacity at that plant though? Like, do they have a lot of extra capacity, or
I think they've got enough capacity to be able to support building some Cupras.
Yeah,
not
they got
because
5
Cupra is
years
the
to
biggest
expand
vehicle.
capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ID4 is not exactly selling like hotcakes. So.
Oh, poor ID4.
Yeah. All right. It's not.
All right. Speaking of those tariffs, Automotive News reporting that with the tariffs, Stellantis said this week that they could see their profits drop by 75% this year due to the tariffs.
That's not what Stellantis needs.
No, they do not.
Oh man.
Yeah.
75. Oops.
And like last week when two of you were both gone, we mentioned that Stellantis has been retooling their Brampton, Ontario assembly plant where they used to build the Charger and Challenger and 300. It's near Toronto. They've been retooling that to build the next generation Compass. Apparently, they have paused that work there, and it could be that they're now reconsidering the plan and may build that at one of their U.S. plants instead. Which again is going to add cost because
cost and time. It's going to be another year. I think people don't understand how hard it is. Building a plant is like 4 or 5 years. Tooling a plant's like a year.
Right.
Like it's not something you just like, oh, hey, we'll just start building it. It's not like
Stellantis does have unused capacity.
Yeah, it says that it has. I mean, it would still be tooling it to build the cars they want to build, but it says the utilization rate's just 52 in the U.S. and it has an excess capacity of 1.3 million cars. So they could shift it here, but like you said, it's not just building a factory is tough. So is retooling everything to build a specific car. So having to make this all work for whatever vehicles they want to build is not a 2-minute process.
My guess is that most likely they'll end up building it in Belvidere, Illinois, along with the new midsize crossover, the Cherokee replacement, which Friday night I happened to see 2 of those on my way home from the airport.
Oh yeah, thanks.
He sent us little camouflage pictures.
I shot. It's funny because you think those camouflage pictures are like, oh, you can't tell them. Like it's just like I know it's a Jeep.
Yeah,
and there you go.
That's really all you can tell. Like you can study it all you want,
and you can get the basic profile of it. I mean, it's kind of like this thing looks kind of like a 3/4 scale version of the current Grand Cherokee.
Yeah, which is nice. A smaller, Cherokee would be kind of cool. I like it when they put the big flaps on them, so it even throws you off even more. So you're like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's like, is that actually a bit of car under there, or is that just flappy stuff to confuse me?
Flaps. If you drive fast enough, it'll fly away.
All right. And then, the other thing with tariffs, of course, if these continue, is there's a good chance that affordable new cars will become a thing of the past in the United States. Because my projection is on average, we'll see new car prices climb by $6,000 to $8,000. And, rather than apply 25% to every new car that's brought across the border, they will try to mitigate that by spreading the total pain across the entire vehicle fleet. So domestically built cars will go up by some amount, and imported vehicles will go up by a similar percentage. So probably somewhere in the 12 to 15% range across the board on new vehicles.
Cars are already so expensive.
Yeah, so it's going to be hard to find anything under $30,000, probably.
Oh, that's a huge.
Because what was the lowest price car? Do we have? Isn't there only like
the Versa? I think right now is the cheapest you can get.
Yeah, Nissan Versa.
And what is it? Is it still under 20 or is it just over 20? I'm Googling right this minute.
I think the base price of a Versa right now is
Wait, I just got it.
about 18 and change.
Yeah, 17,190 is what their site says. Just Googling the site for the base. 17. Yeah. So if you add 6,000 to that, you're up over. Yeah. You're going to.
Yeah. I mean, it'll probably be, closer to 4 or 5 that, they put on a Versa.
Right.
And then similar amount for the Sentra. And the Versas and Sentras are built in Mexico. So they're
Go get one now.
Yeah. as is the Ford Maverick and the Bronco Sport.
And
they're all built in Mexico. So
go get them now.
Yep. Get them while you can.
I know, yeah.
Or not. Who knows what's going to happen on the second? Because it's always like, we're going to do a thing. And then
that's the trickiest part for this. This is an industry that takes a lot to pivot, no matter how agile they try to be. It takes time to pivot on pricing and production and all these things. And when the regulations keep changing, it's not easy to just flip back. Oh, wait. I mean,
even for vehicles that are assembled in the U.S., they still get a lot of parts that come from Canada or Mexico or other countries.
Yeah.
This week, on Wednesday, I got a call from Mike Levine at Ford, like about an hour and a half before an announcement came from the White House about what the plan was. And he just wanted to highlight, Ford's U.S. production, the fact that 80% of Ford vehicles sold here are assembled in the U.S., which is true. Most of what they sell here that's not assembled in the U.S. is the Maverick, the Bronco Sport, and the Mach-E and the Lincoln Nautilus. Those are the 4 models. And Nautilus is not very high volume.
No.
Neither is Mach-E, but the Maverick and Bronco Sport are pretty high volume. Yeah. But everything else that they sell here is assembled in the U.S. But, all the gas V8 engines that they use in F-Series trucks, both F-150 and Super Duties, those are all produced in Windsor, Ontario. All of the diesel V8s used in those Super Duty trucks, those all come from Mexico. And so those are going to face tariffs as well. So those, there's going to be price increases across the board on everything, even if it's built in the U.S.
I don't envy the people at the automakers who now have to suddenly look at the percentage of their vehicles that are built here versus the percentage of their vehicles that are built elsewhere to determine exactly what the new costs of those vehicles will be and what gets a tariff and what doesn't. That's going to be, it's going to be madness. I'm sorry, accountant, wherever
accountants are going to be in high demand.
They're going to be employed, right? And right now is a busy time because it's almost tax season. They're like, can we wait till after tax season? They're probably all losing it right now.
Yeah. It's and I think people don't realize, like, the pricing of a vehicle, I mean, they'll have like up until the day before they actually announce. Like, it's not like set in stone. They have an idea, but they have to look at the market. They have to look at what's going on. And then right before, whenever we say, well, pricing will come later, it's because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they have a general idea, but as soon as they finally announce pricing, it's so close to like on sale date because there's so many things that go into that into making that decision. And so, yeah, it's not like they're like, oh, we're going to build this car in 3 years and the pricing is going to be, $35,000. It's like, we're going to build a car and we're guessing it's going to be between 30 and 40.
Well, and we even go it's true. We even go on drive programs. And if you're the first wave on a drive program, sometimes you're like, so what's the pricing? We'll have that for you before the embargo lifts. The embargo lifts in a week. Yep. We'll have it for you by then.
We'll have it for you by then.
So you're writing a story with, the price of the base trim is XXX as you're trying to prep it literally a week before the vehicle for all the reviews lift. They're still trying to fine tune it and make sure they have the pricing right.
Yeah, it's the car. The automotive industry is so complex and weird, and it's like everything is like hurry up and wait for a long time. And then when we talked back to that Nissan story, we talked to Alfonso, the designer, and they went from like 50 something months of like working on a car, and they're trying to get down to like 30 months or 37 months.
That's
or something
a big
like
difference.
That. Yeah, which is a huge, huge difference. But I think people just like, oh, they're going to make a car and they'll make it in 6 months. Like, you don't even like the amount of gears and wheels and everything just to make one car, a goofy little car, like one car that might not even sell a lot, which is why is immense in millions and millions and sometimes maybe billions of dollars. Like just getting the new Bronco on the road is probably cost Ford like ugh, some
Lots
insane
of
amount of
and an
money.
amount of money that
It
would
was,
make you like your eyes bug out.
that's, I mean, a program like Bronco, is well over $1 billion, probably somewhere between $1 and $1.5 billion
For
because
one
it's
vehicle. For
one
one
vehicle.
that
And that includes the
yeah.
design and engineering and validation of the vehicle, but also
R&D
tooling up
and
the manufacturing, getting your suppliers lined up. Yeah, so it's an expensive process.
So imagine how much, like, think about that, the time and the money involved to bring a vehicle to market. And then if they fumble and the vehicle isn't what they wanted it to be, the public doesn't receive it the way they want it to, the automotive press doesn't receive it, and suddenly the sales aren't what they hoped, and they spent all that time and all that money. It's like a
yeah.
catastrophic thing. Ugh.
It's also why whenever people are like, oh yeah, like Ford is losing X amount of money on every Mach-E, or Rivian's losing X amount of money on every, when they talk about the EVs, I'm like, yeah, they're losing that amount of money on their Broncos for the first year or two. That is not a profit. If you
Right.
look at overall, that's not a profitable vehicle
Over the
right off.
life over the generational life of a vehicle, it's usually profitable. But
Yeah.
Yes, but like that first year when they're like, oh, Rivian, they're losing this much money every car. I'm like, if you asked Ford and they would tell you, they would be like, if Ford would be willing to tell you how much money they're losing on every Bronco for the first year, your brain would explode.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Broncos,
Yeah, let's talk about the Bronco.
so
Bronco.
the base two-door Bronco for 2025 starts at $37,995. That is with a 2.3 liter 4-cylinder turbo. If you wanted a two-door Bronco with a V6 engine, guess how much that's going to cost you?
So much more money.
Way too much money.
I mean, to go from a 4-cylinder to a V6, how much extra would you, $38,000.
How much is a banana? $10?
This number is ridiculous.
Yes, it is. So right now, to get a two-door Bronco with a 2.7 liter twin turbo V6, you can't just order that as an engine option in a base or a Big Bend or an Outer Banks or a Badlands. You have to jump all the way up to this Strop edition that they launched for 2025, which is named for Bill Strop, who raced Baja Broncos in the 1960s and 1970s.
That's cool.
So the Strop edition starts at $75,635, or but basically $78,000 when you add in delivery charges.
$8,000 for a Bronco.
Yep. Well, that's not even. I mean, that's not even the most expensive Bronco.
No, it's not.
Because the Raptor is $90,000.
Oh my gosh, it's so much money.
Oh my god.
I'm sure the tariffs will make all these things cheaper.
Sure. Yes.
So it's a $35,000. It's a very expensive V6.
Yes. I mean, you do get a bunch of other stuff on the
it looks really cool. But that's just they've to sort of reduce manufacturing and say, hey, these versions of the vehicle aren't selling well, so let's get rid of those trim levels.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of them, or we're just not making money on them because we spent $1 billion bringing the Bronco to market. We need to recoup that money a lot quicker than we thought we did, because we have no idea how much things are going to cost in 2 weeks. So let's really start trimming the fat.
And what it really does tell you, you're right, Robbie, though, what that really does tell you is we have to cut the stuff that doesn't make sense. It's been on sale for a bit. What's working, what's not working. Okay. Some of this isn't working. Let's weed it, whittle it down a little bit.
Sadly, people don't buy two-door cars. Mm-mm. That's what it comes down to.
That's the challenge. Most people don't want it.
It's just nerds like us, which is there's 12 of us. We're all journalists. We don't have money. We don't have money to buy the things that we're always asking the automakers to build.
Yeah, build it, but we can't buy it.
We can't afford it.
If you could build it, that'd be great. Build it because it'll make us all happy.
Yeah, just come on.
You can get the V6 in the Bronco Outer Banks, but only with a 4-door.
Oh,
I
guess.
a 4-door V6
See?
Outer Banks will cost you, let's see, just scroll down through this enormous options list here, about $54,000.
So $12,000 for the V6 and an extra door.
Yeah, well, you do get other stuff going from the base model to the Outer Banks, but
yeah.
So that the cheapest V6 Bronco you can get is going to be about 54.
Yeah. Well,
You gotta get a used. You gotta get a 2024 because apparently there were
that's where everyone buys used.
Yeah,
cars.
Good. There were 6 trims with 2 doors, and all but one could get a V6. So you did this last year. You could spend $50,000.
Yeah, the 2-door looks like is now only available in the base and the Badlands.
Mm-hmm.
None of the other trim levels are available as a 2-door anymore.
Nope. So they really narrowed it down. Yep. It's got to be just they weren't selling. If they were selling like hotcakes, Ford would not have gotten rid of them.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's finish up with Kongs and Volkswagen. Robbie, do your dogs have Kongs?
We had one, and they kind of didn't care.
Oh, really?
It was very. They were pretty and more. One of them only wants the toy that the other one has, and the other one just wants the ball. He just wants to have a ball, and so we have like little soccer balls and like stuff like that for him to play. Yeah, they just weren't really all that interested in the Kong. So
did Nicole? Did Kit's dog? Was she?
He did, but Kit's dog was so tiny. He needed like the world's tiniest little Kongs because otherwise, when he bopped them, they'd bop him in the nose and like knock him over. So he needed little teeny ones.
Where did they get this German Shepherd for this?
I don't know.
I want to know. They haven't posed once where he's got his hand on top of
a little paw on it.
It's like he looks so like I'm a paid spokesperson. Like something about that.
Well, my dogs have always loved Kongs because in the evening they get a Kong with some peanut butter in it, and they spend some time, digging all that peanut butter out of the Kong, and they love that before they go to bed. So for those who are not dog owners, they're not familiar with what a Kong is. This is a rubber thing that looks like kind of like 3 donuts stacked together. It's sort of cone shaped and it's hollow, and you can fill it with some treats, and then the dog plays with it and uses their tongue to extract whatever you stuffed in there
while he's having a snack.
Yeah. So anyway, VW made an announcement this week. I had no idea about the origins of the Kong. But they're doing a deal with Kong because apparently the Kong was created by a mechanic in Denver in the mid 1960s who was working on a VW microbus, a Type 2 bus, and he found, and his dog, his German Shepherd that he had at the time, as many dogs are wont to do, will, when they start chewing on something, they eventually destroy it. And so he was looking for something that the dog could chew on without destroying it. And he found this spare rubber axle stop in the back of this bus, and gave it to the dog. Started chewing on it, and he found that it wasn't getting destroyed immediately. And so he basically designed the Kong from the same material, and created the shape, and made it hollow so you could put stuff in it, put treats in it. And so now, 60 years later, VW is doing a special edition version of the Kong in the same shade of blue that they offer on the ID Buzz.
That's cute.
And they're partnered with VCA Charities. So if you buy one of these special edition Kongs, they will donate another one to a local shelter.
That's cool.
So, if you have a dog that needs a Kong, if you can find one of these blue ones with a picture of the Buzz on the package, get that one instead of the red one that is the more common color. And a local shelter dog will get one as well.
Yay. Do a good thing.
Yeah. My dogs already have Kongs, and these things are nearly indestructible. They hold up for a long time. Although Morty, when we first got Morty last year, he did destroy 2 older ones that we had, 2 older Kongs. He managed to tear them apart.
Oh, geez.
But so far the ones we have right now are holding up. But those are several years old. So
there you go.
So that is Volkswagen and the Kong. All right, let's do a couple of listener questions / comments. First one from Andrew Pappas, longtime listener. You mentioned that there should be a reset button for the infotainment in cars. It took me a while to find the one for Volvo. The home button, if held down briefly, shuts off the screen. If you hold it down for a long press, not sure how long, maybe 30 seconds, it will reset the infotainment system while the car is in motion. I've had to do this a few times because it will actually lose all audio output, radio, phone calls, even the fake relay ticking noise for the blinker. So I can't remember if we were talking about this when the two of you were here, or it might have been when you were both gone. But I commented that when modern infotainment systems crash, there's usually some way to do the equivalent of a Control-Alt-Delete on a Windows device to reset it. And I mentioned that, automakers, on older PCs, like the one sitting beside, at least on the case of the one sitting beside me here, there's a reset button, where you just press the button and it just restarts the whole machine. Even if it's totally locked up, it'll just restart the machine. I mentioned that automakers should put that in for their infotainment systems. So apparently Volvo has thought of that.
I like that. That would be nice. Easier than having to do all the things you have to do to reboot that stuff sometimes. Turn the car off and on, let it sit for a minute, let it completely shut everything down, come back.
Walk away from turn on the blinkers, walk away until the blinkers stop flashing. And
exactly.
Then car.
And okay, it's really reset itself. Let's give it another try.
Fun fact, that little fake relay ticking noise, it's the sound of a twig breaking in the woods. Mm-hmm. I was in Sweden, and they told us that, and I lost my mind, really? And then I yelled at everyone to shut up so I could get an audio of it and then write an article for Car and Driver.
Yeah, I heard that one at a Volvo program as well a couple of years back, and
it was like, "And we did this thing." You're like, "What? What? Wait, hold on!" And they were like, "What?"
Yeah, their designers went walking through the woods, looking for sounds to use, because as more and more of the stuff gets electronic, a lot of these sounds that you hear in older cars are mechanical sounds because of the mechanical parts actually doing stuff.
Made sounds,
like your turn signal, that clicking of your turn signal was actually because there was a physical electrical relay in there that toggles back and forth, and so it's actually parts toggling in there. And when that becomes all solid state, it's like there's no sound. So how do you know if your turn signal's on? Record the sound of a twig being stepped on.
I mean, it works.
Yeah. All right. And then from Ed, as to your previous discussion of connected car systems, Android Automotive with Google Automotive Services not working when there's no cell reception, does it have an offline mode for maps? Google Maps on my phone does this. Is there local storage for apps such as Spotify to have offline storage and downloads in the infotainment system? So the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. So wherever you are, when the system is, when the system has connectivity, it will cache the map tiles for some radius around where you are. I don't know, maybe 50, 100, 200 miles. It probably varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, but yes, it will download offline maps that it stores locally. And there's also a buffer for media streaming. If you're listening to podcasts or music, it'll buffer some amount of that. But eventually, if you drive out of cell range, eventually it's going to use up that buffer, and then you're left with nothing.
Stuck.
Yeah.
You're out of luck.
Yep. And that's it for this week.
We're done.
Thank you all for listening, and we'll be back next time.
Bye.
Bye.